Every great story begins with a question. A big question, a small question, a dumb question, a weird question, a scary question, or an interesting question, or a selfish question. The stories in our lives begin from these seeds of curiosity within our minds. What if, you ask? What if? What if a spaceship carried me to another galaxy? What if I met something there? What if I solved a murder? What if there was a clean, reliable source of energy to power our world? The only aspect that such questions always share with each other, whether you're writing a story, clicking through the NASA website, or watching an oil field through the window of your car, is a single adjective. And no, that adjective is not good, or open, or any of the other somewhat meaningless ways we usually describe questions. That adjective is inconceivable. Now, before you go telling me, that word, I do not think it means what you think it means, allow me to explain. See, when you ask a question, you're opening up neural pathways in your brain. These pathways gape, open and pulsing, and they demand to be understood, to be filled. To do so, we draw on our past experiences and our logical conclusions in order to describe, say, what we're going to get from the grocery store tonight, or when I have to be outside the school so we can get to the movie on time. Using our memories and our problem-solving skills, we find or create an answer in the blink of an eye. With any old question, that is. With an inconceivable question, there are no past experiences. We can make generalizations or conclusions, but we can't simply answer them, because they haven't happened yet. There's no way to tell for sure. To find such questions, there's a pretty simple formula. What if? That's all it is. If you've ever played the what if game, you know that such questions can get very ridiculous. They can make you imagine an untold number of quirky, uncomfortable things, or interesting, thought-provoking things. They're almost magical that way. I use what ifs quite a lot in my life, simply in the way I metacognate, or think about my thinking. In my mind, when I have an idea, I've identified two specific types of what if questions that both inspire me and hold me back. I call these two types of questions seely questions and unseely questions. Such questions, I found, can help us to reach our goals and even to overcome and understand our fears. Let's take a step back, though, for a moment, and a little detour to the ancient Scottish lowlands, where there's a certain myth that's about to become relevant. Scottish folklore describes two fairy peoples. One of these peoples was benevolent and life-giving towards humans. They brought good luck, were kind, and though they might play a few pranks on their wingless brethren every now and again, it's all in good faith. These fairies were called the Seelie Court. But there were other fairies, darker ones, who acted with evil and maliciousness. These fairies, the unseely court, were said to pursue explicit harm and torment to their fairy brethren and to humans. Generally, they weren't your average Tinkerbell. I call my two types of inconceivable questions seely and unseely, mostly because I like ancient Scottish folklore and fate classifications, but also because of the characteristics they share with the different courts. Ask yourself, if you will, what if I spoke to the most powerful person in the world? Maybe it's the president or the head of an organization attacking an issue important to you, or a religious leader, or someone else. What if you said something? What if you shoved open the door to solving a world problem? What if you made people's lives better? What if you made your own life better? What if you said something good to someone powerful and they listened? But what if they didn't? What if you chose the wrong person to speak to? What if you said the wrong thing? What if you made a fool out of yourself? What if you were wrong? Starting to see the distinction? All of these questions linger in our minds when we start to imagine. And the ones that come first, the little fantasies you might allow yourselves, are what I call your seely questions. The ones that come later to talk you down from those fantasies, those are your unseely questions. And both are essential for the accomplishment of goals and the alleviation of fear. Let's start with the good, for those are just a wee bit easier to quantify. Seely questions are the questions that get you inspired, excited, or curious. Any old question can be a seely question, but only the ones that you truly want to answer are going to do anything for you. Those are your seely questions, and they're the ones that push you to grow as an individual. Because the special thing about seely questions is that they are goals. If you decide to go after your seely question, you have begun to pursue a goal. But unlike goals, instead of providing something to be accomplished, a seely question gives you something to be answered. Going back to our earlier example, the seely question is, what if I spoke to the most powerful person in the world? That's the big question, the goal-setting question. If this question inspires you enough to take action, then you have begun to pursue a goal. You start to decide who, what, and how to get there. But instead of providing something to be accomplished, speaking to someone, the Seely question gives you something to be discovered. Consider, I'm going to speak to the most powerful person in the world versus what if I spoke to the most powerful person in the world? The question is broader, but at the same time, it's not nearly as vague, or not nearly as intimidating. Where a goal provides you with a destination, a Seely question encourages a journey. And to me, a journey is so much more powerful than just fixing one's eyes on some distant point and plodding in that direction. A Seely question encourages through curiosity and discovery, not discipline or conviction. There's nothing wrong with the latter, of course, but those are outward motivators. The itch to answer a question, the need for discovery, that all comes from within. And that is so much more powerful. But as we've discovered, there are roadblocks in a Seely question as well. There are little doubts that burrow like pine beetles into your brain and tell you to be realistic, to be afraid, that keep you from following the goal journey that your Seely question laid out for you. These little dark fairies are the Seely questions, and they're the most interesting of all. It's impossible to have a Seely question without a couple of unseelies latching on around the edges simply because of the nature of such questions. The whole point of Seely questions, as we've discovered, is to be inconceivable, to be uncertain, and thus to force you to investigate a true answer. And uncertainty is the root of fear. When the mind focuses on the fact that it doesn't know a specific outcome, anxiousness is born. As humans, we prefer any negative outcome to an uncertain outcome. We'd rather eat plain spinach than risk going hungry if your friend doesn't end up sharing their food. Psychologically, we want to know what our next hours, days, and years are going to bring, and not knowing the answer forms fear. Imagine the last scary movie you watched. What was really so scary about it? What made your heart leap into your throat and your hands clench? It was the suspense, wasn't it? The uncertainty. Unseely questions are just the what-ifs of this fearful not knowing. They hold you back instead of push you forward. Where a Seely question provides a positive outcome, an unseely question forces you to imagine the fear. Unique to the specific uncertainties of your Seely question, an unseely question is the insecurity that keeps you from accomplishing your goal. And often, they can be quite consistent. I tend to be the most discouraged by the unseely question, what if I'm wrong? Not wrong in morals, but wrong in facts. What if I'm incorrect? This fear throws a wrench in quite a few of my goals, including, but not limited to, writing a book, learning to speak another language, and saving the world, in no particular order. Some of you might share this consistent fear of being incorrect, where for some of you, it might be overshadowed by another. A friend of mine, for example, is haunted by the unseely question, what if I make a fool out of myself? Another asks, what if I hurt someone? As roadblocks in the journey that our Seely question laid out for us, we have to find some way to get around these unseelies. But they're not to be avoided, they're to be confronted. And no, not the big worst-case scenario what if that would discourage anyone and everyone from pursuing your goal. Not, what if the most powerful person in the world is evil and decides to use my information in some twisted dystopian way? No. The question to be answered should be the reason why you, and you specifically, aren't or don't want to answer your Seely question. Because unseely questions are just that, they're questions. And just like any other, they itch to be answered by our past experiences and our logical conclusions. What if I'm wrong? I ask as I stand here in front of you. Well, I've been wrong before. Maybe not in this specific scenario, but it's happened. I remember what that feels like, and I draw on that memory in order to answer my unseely question, just like I'd answer any other question. Okay, I say. If I'm wrong, then I'll have to change my mindset and clarify to anyone I might have spoken to about it. I'll apologize. I'll move on. And poof, I have an answer. It's not a good answer, and I certainly don't like it, but it's no longer as uncertain, and I'm no longer as afraid. Of course, I haven't killed my unseely, and I probably never will. But because I have an answer for it, an answer that decreases its uncertainty and its fear, it doesn't hold me back from pursuing my goal and answering my Seely question anymore. By thinking of my goals and fears as these two types of inconceivable questions, I've been able to push myself for greater and greater heights and to reach for bigger goals. I've been able to enjoy the process of learning and growing that is the journey of answering a Seely question. I've encountered a vast number of unseelies, and I've done my best to answer them, to try and alleviate those fears, because I know that facing them will decrease their uncertainty and thus their power over me. Fears and goals are inseparable, but they can coexist. By understanding their status as uncertainties, both encouraging and discouraging, we can use them to answer our way to what we want to accomplish. Those fairies of questions, both light and dark, are what are going to get us to where we want to be. I want you to imagine that little fantasy that you have swirling around in your head right now. I want you to pull it out. What if you could fly? What if you were famous? What if you buy that nice frappuccino when you leave school today? How impossible really is it? How inconceivable. Thank you.
Hmm.